Hour 2 Overdrive continues, brought to you by FanDuel, bringing you everything from the opening line to the final score. Big hour. We've got Ryan Dinwiddie coming up. Argos in Montreal. This is redemption, right? Last week was not redemption against Ottawa. It's a good start towards it, right? Last time you played a playoff game at BMO Field, we know how it played out.
Yeah.
But this is the one you've been circling for a long time.
Got to get these guys.
Have to get them. And I think the Alouettes are like a 1.5-point favorite. That's effectively a pick 'em.
What's it mean? I mean, what were the Argos last year when Montreal blew them out? Weren't they a 9.5-point
massive favorite? They might have been a double-digit favorite. They might have been at that point. And there was hubris. I think there was a full expectation that they're just going to steamroll the Alouettes. And now the shoe's on the other foot because the Owls have been the pace car in the East all year. They've known what's coming. They knew they were going to win the East. They knew they were going to sit out the semifinal. They're going to wait in the East final and host it. And the Argos were the team that was trying to not necessarily get in. That was never really in doubt, but they wanted home field.
Yeah.
You know, we spoke with Dinwiddie about that last week. Like, they wanted to win some big games down the stretch to push off Ottawa and play a game at BMO Field.
Well, they had to find their footing. They didn't have their quarterback for half the season, right? They're kind of getting into the swing of things. Where last year they ran the table and they were the powerhouse of the league, where people were saying this could be the greatest CFL team of all time.
Mm-hmm.
Always a death knell, right?
Oh, yeah.
Like until you have the championship, you don't want to hear that.
No, it's like the 07 Pats.
Yeah.
Like, you have to close.
The 73-win Warriors.
Right.
That didn't win the championship.
Isn't that amazing that they lost? Yeah. Like, both the 07 Pats, last year's Argos, 16-2. Although the Argos, at least those teams, like the Pats got to the Super Bowl and lost, and the Warriors were up 3-1 in the final.
Should have had it.
And lost.
Draymond Green got suspended and all the rest of it.
Yeah.
And LeBron did it to him.
And LeBron was pretty phenomenal. Kyrie was pretty good, too.
Yep.
But, yeah, that is pretty astonishing that the 07 Pats and the 73-win Warriors, neither of them closed.
Yeah.
Which has to take them out of conversations for greatest of all time. Like, greatest team of all time. I don't think you can't unless you win the championship.
And yet, the entire season, people were calling them the greatest team of all time. You know, how many headlines would those guys have read about themselves? Is this the greatest team of all time? Question mark.
Yeah.
Well, no, because we just lost.
Right. Like the 72-win Bulls. Guess what they did?
They won.
They won.
Exactly.
Yeah. Obviously the Dolphins. What happened when they went 14-0 during the regular season? They won the Super Bowl.
That's right.
Got to do it, man. You got to close. 16-2 Argos. Good for you. You got smoked.
But it's an interesting thing about psychology, right? How many coaches get freaked out when it's going too well? Like, I'm wondering if, like, Scott Arniel at Winnipeg is like, maybe we should lose a couple here.
Like last night was the Hellebuck show.
You know what I mean?
But they're the second team in history to win 13 of your first 14 games.
And it's almost like, we don't want to go in this well this early. You know what I mean? This is just too good too soon.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Like, it can't get, like, I've known a lot of coaches that get jittery when it's going too good too early.
Right. They're more uneasy. They're more like in a mood. They have an attitude. They kind of hate their team more when they're winning. It's counterintuitive. You would think, like, it doesn't make any sense,
and yet it does, because you're worried about complacency,
bad habits, and complacency.
Bad habits,
egos.
People starting to think about, what am I going to get out of this?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, we're this good. Well, it's because of me, right? Who's going to get the credit?
Right.
You know.
There is a line that at some point has to be passed where it just becomes an everyday existence that you're just that good.
Yeah.
And you're going to have to live with it. You know, the Bruins a couple of years ago, they lost in the first round. They were up 3-1 against the Panthers at home.
135 points.
Everybody had them pegged as a lock to win the Stanley Cup. They couldn't get out of the first round.
Well, the curse of the President's Trophy, right?
And
that was the ultimate one, because that was the greatest regular season team in the history of hockey.
Ever. And the previous greatest ever was Tampa when they lost in the first round of Columbus. And they got swept.
Amazing.
You got the Cavs 9-0 tonight against the Warriors tonight in Cleveland.
Playing pretty well, actually.
I'm a bit surprised by that.
Yeah.
Like, considering how bad they were last year, especially on the road. Remember how awful they were on the road?
Came off beating Boston in Boston.
Yeah, pretty incredible.
Really good.
Yeah, and Steve Kerr getting booed. How often do you see a coach get booed on the road?
An American coach getting booed in America after winning an Olympic gold medal.
Yes.
You know, like what?
How parochial is Boston?
I'm sorry I won the gold medal. Yeah, I didn't play Jason Tatum, and we kicked Jaylen Brown to the curb before the Olympics, but we also took two of your other players. I mean, you know, what did you want?
Right. Yeah, when you put it that way.
I mean, seriously. The guy won an American gold medal. He's getting booed in America.
And they're like, we don't like you because you didn't
not
play
part
our
of
best
America
player
anymore. Like,
I guess not.
I don't get it.
I guess not. Here's Mike Johnson, our TSN hockey analyst, joining us here on the Maple Toyota Hotline. What's happening, Johnny?
Yeah, not much. Listen, the thing about Steve Kerr, who I think we all sort of like, is that it's winning a gold medal for America. While it was close to the end, it doesn't feel like that big of an achievement because they're supposed to win by so much, right? Like the Boston fans are like, listen, you could have taken anybody, including our guys, and won. It's not like your master coaching clinic got the gold medal for us. So I could see we support our guys over there because the win was a foregone conclusion. But anyways, I'm down at the rink here. And it's good. We got the whole squad. Hayes, I'm surprised you're not down here.
I know.
Everyone's down here. It's a Hall of Fame game. It's a fun night. And, it should be a good one.
Yeah, these are cool, man. I was saying an hour ago, Johnny, like it's such a uniquely Toronto Maple Leaf event. It's one of one. They're the only team that hosts a night like tonight. And it must be very cool if you're a Leaf player to get to do this every single year.
It is. It is. Because, pomp and circumstance, the Leafs don't always nail it, if we're going to be honest, right? Like, the Habs get these moments really well, and the Leafs sometimes fall a little flat. But this night, for whatever reason, I've been here and I broadcast several of these games, it always sort of hits. It hits really well. And I think for the players who grew up watching, like how many guys on the ice would be like, Datsuk was my favorite player growing up?
Yeah,
I'm sure quite a few of them. Remember Shea Weber in the hardest shot contest, like JR, Sega 94, maybe too old for these. His personality, his game, if you're an American kid, what he meant to you. I think to have them honored and recognized and people that you sort of looked up to previously, it's a fun night. It's actually a whole fun weekend, honoring these guys. And for me, as a player who played against these guys, like these are all my fellow competitors, athletes, teammates that are going in the last few years. It's particularly it's nice. It's nice to see them and catch up and kind of reminisce on what makes them so great.
Hey, when you look back at Roenick, I was asking Marty Biron about, he was such an outlier, MJ, when it came to being outspoken in a league where, players like, a lot of players are kind of accused of being a little bit boring in the NHL. You know that. You've heard that. This guy was the antithesis of boring, right? He was happy to give you a quote, happy to take on other players, other teams, take on the league if he had to. I was wondering how you felt about that as a fellow player. Like, how did you see Roenick when you were playing and he was known for saying outlandish things in the media?
So I guess my first 3-4 years in the league, he's sort of this wild card and say anything and take on all these different topics. And maybe we hadn't fully embraced the idea of athletes, being true to themselves and owning their own brand and generating interest for being who they are, whatever that entails. And JR took that on and took some hits because of it. And he's one of those guys, and there's several, I can think of several in my career where before I met them, I'm like, I'm not sure I'm going to like this guy. Because he's, I'm maybe quieter, more reserved, and he's sort of louder and out there. And I'm like, he just might be too much for me. And then I played with him. We were teammates briefly in Arizona, or Phoenix back then. And he was an awesome teammate, like just so nice, accommodating, supportive. He's the first guy to call you. What do you need? What can I help you with when you move? Do you need a car? Do you need what? You tell me. Come live at my house. All those things. I'm like, that's not what I expected. I expected the sort of, arrogant, loud, obnoxious guy, and he's not that at all. He's lovely. He was lovely to be a teammate of. And so then that kind of skews my perception of all the other stuff he does, where he's just passionate. And that's what runs through him when he has those outbursts or says something that some people agree with, some people don't. He's just passionate about life and what he thinks.
Well, he'll be there tonight. Leafs Red Wings on TSN 4. You got the Habs in town tomorrow. Matthews on the IR, retroactive to last Sunday, which means he won't play tonight. He won't play tomorrow. What would you expect? What are you focused on? We obviously saw him not play against Boston the other night. They played well. They won that game. What, with him out of the lineup, where do you go first? Like, what are you looking for first from the Maple Leafs without their best player?
So in or out of the lineup, still, Hayes, I'm still focusing on how well they can stick with Craig Berube's game plan, which is a bit different, and how often they drift from it. And this is every team for every game plan. There's moments where you execute it perfectly and moments where it's not quite as good. And how much can they get to a point where they're doing it properly? And I thought against Boston, they largely did it really quite well. But we've seen them fall off from games where they've done it well and then drift away from it. That's what I'm watching tonight is, can they sort of stay within the game plan And then within that context, I'm looking at two things. How many rush chances they give up, because when they don't play well, they give up 5 or 6 and they lose. And when they do play well, they give up 4 or 5 and they win. And then how many rush chances can they generate? Because the last piece of the puzzle to me is Toronto finding a little bit of a rush game back. They were always one of the best teams in the league at it. Well, this year they're down in the bottom quarter of the league in sort of rush chances generated and rush goals scored. Can they find a way to get a little bit better at that while also doing all the checking and the responsibility and the forechecking and the physicality, all that stuff, but mix in just a bit more rush game? If they do that, then they'll really be onto something.
And what about just the idea that you line up, a couple of games like this against Detroit, Montreal tomorrow, MJ, and then you got Ottawa lurking after that. Hayes and I were saying these are 6 points. You should probably feel like you should get all 6. Hopefully you get 5 or 4 at least. And this has sort of been the legacy of the Matthews era, and maybe it goes on before that in Leafland, where they've left a lot of these points on the table against teams that are way below them in the standings, teams they should handle. Do you see any difference in the way Berube might sort of approach playing the lesser lights than we've seen in the past?
So I would only say this, cautionary tale this year. Yes, historically these teams have been lesser. Detroit's 1 point behind Toronto.
Yeah,
2 points behind.
Fair point.
Toronto's 2 games over 500. These teams are all 500. They're not 10 points ahead of these teams. They're basically even with them. So I think 4 points out of 6 would be.
They are better though, Johnny. Regardless of points,
if you
they're
understand,
better.
Toronto's better. Just being better doesn't win you every game.
No, of course not.
That's not how the NHL wins.
No, of course.
So they could be the better team, play relatively well, and win 2 out of 3, and that would stand to be normal. But I think 2 different things. One, it's Stolarz again, right? Maybe in different years, you might look at the opposition and say, okay, well, do we play Wool in this game? Do we get him back up and running? And Craig Berube's like, no, we're playing our best guy, as he should. But maybe that's a bit of a different mentality. And again, we go back to this whole Craig Berube slight shift in mindset, where maybe when you would play 4 teams previously, the idea that we are better, that we should win, so we can just sort of play a little looser, a little freer, a little careless, but it's okay because we're so much better than them, so we'll figure out how to score more goals. That's not how they play now. And maybe that mentality will help them in games like this. It didn't help them the last one, right? Remember Columbus?
Mm-hmm. Yep,
they absolutely fell on their face flat. Maybe they can learn from that. And if they play the system they're supposed to with the energy required, it would likely help them get better results against teams well below them in the standings.
Johnny, Pittsburgh got pumped again last night by Carolina, and they're in Washington tonight. And the Caps have been, one of the most consistent teams early in the year. Are you at a point? Do you think it could be possible that Pittsburgh is like a lottery team, like one of the 5 or 6 worst teams in the league?
Oh yeah, I do. I think it's just defense. No matter how great their aging stars are, and Sid's still playing exceptionally well, and Gino got off to a great start. If you're the worst defensive team in the league, and they are, maybe along with Montreal, they're right there as the worst defensive team in the league. Your goaltending is just okay. Your defense is good with the puck, but slow and not great without it, and you don't have a lot of depth up front. As I watch them play, and there are different ways to get whatever they are, 5 and 8, whatever they might be. They've gotten there about as ugly as you can. It's not like, well, there's some good games there and we got goalied here. No, they get dominated game after game, shots, chances, goals. I absolutely could see them being on the bottom 5 or 6 teams in the league, just because I don't know where the solutions come from. You can't say, hey, Sid, go save us. He's already playing really well. Gino, same thing. And I don't know if any player could sort of outscore the issues they have right now. And then my next step is, okay, well, they're clearly not a Stanley Cup threat. They're maybe not even a playoff threat. So what do? Do you keep running it back? Do you try to load up, or do you somehow try to pivot if you're Kyle Dubas, say, well, as we have it, it's not working. We have to do something else. And does that something else become big? I don't know how that. It's too early to have that conversation, but that's where they're headed, given the way they're playing.
When you look at the way Dubas has done it, MJ, it felt like, look, however you felt about Dubas' legacy here in Toronto, it felt like it was a tough spot. to take over a team
yeah.
in the waning days of Sidney Crosby's career, with Malkin still around and Letang still around, and the memories of the cup, the back-to-back cups, not that far in the distance, but pretty far in the distance. I mean, what do you pinpoint that Dubas might have done differently if you're playing, 2020 hindsight?
And new ownership. I think that's the key thing.
Yeah, good point.
Right? And that's, like, could you imagine walking into that interview and say, okay, listen, we're not good enough. I mean, Sid's an all-time great. We're not good enough. We got to strip it down, see if he wants to stick around for 4 or 5 years while we rebuild around him. But we're going to be out of the playoffs. We'll eventually get back to it. We can't re-sign Gino. We can't re-sign Chris Letang. And that would be the prudent way to go. Do you think he would have got the job?
Yeah, exactly.
Probably, because that might be waning interest and attendance and sponsorship and ratings and all that stuff that a new ownership group's like, no, we want to, be competitive. We want full houses. We want playoff dates. So I don't know if he, in his mind, honestly wanted to go down this road, but this is the road he had to pitch and probably had to go down to even get the job in Pittsburgh. And it was sort of not doomed from the start. I mean, I guess you could have made better decisions. You could have not made the trade for Erik Karlsson, whatever it might be, but they were always going to be in tough because of the path that they were forced to take because of the legacy of the great players they've had and the new ownership group coming in wanting to string that along a few more years.
Yeah, I feel like they probably looked at Dubas, even though he didn't win anything here, but when he got the job originally, he walked in to Matthews and Marner and Nylander, and I believe Tavares signed his first offseason as the GM. And then, he put together some pieces that allowed them to remain competitive. They racked up a ton of points. They made the playoffs every single year. And I do wonder if the thought was, well, bring that guy in here because we have our Matthews and our Marner and our Nylander, and he's going to be able to patch it together just like he did in Toronto up against the cap, core 4, core 5, top-heavy talent. And remember, his first offseason was incredibly active. Like, he acquired Riley Smith. He signed Ryan Graves. He decided to keep Tristan Jarry around. They made a lot of signings. They brought in Noel Acciari. Like, spent a lot of money, splashed money around pretty quickly. Obviously acquired Karlsson, the biggest move of them all. I'm going to go get Erik Karlsson, and he made that happen. So it's not as if he's just gotten there and just done nothing. Like, he has been trying to patch it together. It's just either it wasn't capable of being patched together because those players are not what the Leafs were in 2016, 2017, or the moves he's made just haven't been that good. And that's smart. I think it's probably a combination of both.
Yeah, for sure, a combination of both. Yeah, you could look back at the moves and think that was not money well spent. Erik Karlsson trade should not have been made.
No.
Should not have gone down the road.
Simple.
You got to take that $10 million or $8 million, whatever he's costing, and allocate it differently. But I think it's also worth noting that, like, signing free agent players are never the answer for taking good teams or bad teams to good. They're way more effective free agents in taking good teams to better. And I think Pittsburgh was closer to being a bad team. And so trying to sign, whether it's Riley Smith or Jarry or Graves or whoever, they're not enough. There's a reason why they're unrestricted free agents. The top players don't become unrestricted free agents. And so he was making the best of what was available, making the best of the path that he was sort of committed to. And it hasn't worked out at all. And he probably would have been better served having done nothing. But I don't know if he was allowed to do nothing. Right? Yeah. I don't know what the mandate of the organization and his boss was like. What do you mean you have $10 million in salary cap space? What do you mean you want to play young players and trade for prospects and picks? That's not what we talked about. So we know all of that, but there's no doubt that team is in trouble. And it feels like, given the commitments of the team, of the players they have, and the salaries, like, there's no easy unwinding of the path they're on. They're sort of committed to it for 2-3 more years minimum, and then you can maybe have that conversation, unless those big guys get frustrated or with the reality of they don't want to spend their last 2 years of their career, 3 years of their career playing in an environment like this where they're not competitive, and they say, okay, we'll do you a solid by allowing you to trade us somewhere. And Sid says, listen, I wanted to be a Penguin for life, but I don't want this for 3 or 4 more years. I can't deal with this. So I'll open myself up to trade me to Colorado or to wherever he would want to go. Malkin, Letang, same thing. Then you could kickstart the rebuild. But beyond that, I don't know what they can do.
I tell you what, well, Hayes has been telling Sid to get out of there for
Get
years
out,
now.
I know.
He's had that hot take going for
the entire
years.
city.
Yes.
I know they love him and hate him down there.
They hate me down at Pitt. They don't like me, I don't think. But listen, I'm right. I'm not changing my mind on that.
You're not wrong.
This is what I was saying, that they're not a good team.
No.
Like, they haven't made the playoffs in 2 years. It's not like they were in a cup final 2 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
They've been they haven't been terrible. They have not been good enough for 2 years, and they're just going to get worse.
Yeah.
You know?
But MJ is. I was looking at some of the numbers on Crosby, and I don't want to besmirch, the captain of Team Canada here. But is there a fall off there, or am I wrong on that?
I mean, I think maybe a little bit of a slower start. I think part of the reality is they don't have the puck as much, right? The team's not that good around him. I think he still is basically a point-a-game player. He's got 5 goals and 13 points in 14 games. So, not on pace for 90, but basically on pace for 80 and pace for 30-something goals. Perhaps a little drop-off, which might be understandable at 40. But I think he's probably also largely being influenced by the caliber of the team he's on and how much he has to do on that team. I mean, he's got to really carry it in every situation, play defense against the other team's best lines, take on the other team's best checkers, play on the penalty kill, play on the power play, you name it. They could use him to do it. I think at the end of the year, he still ends up with 35 goals and 85 points. And if that's a down year, well, God, we can only all have a down year as bad as that.
No kidding. 20 years into the league.
Yeah, he's doing okay.
Yeah. I think what I've read and seen at times is some concern about the defensive play.
Yeah.
Maybe some of the details. I saw someone complaining down there that maybe it was a lazy change at one point, and I think they're reading into it like, is the concern that Sid's kind of realizing this isn't going anywhere. Exactly.
Right. Well,
not so much the physical skills have dropped off, but the emotional engagement. And maybe at the end of a 5-1 game against Carolina, it might.
You're going to see that.
He's human.
Yeah, you're going to see that.
And
that's terrifying for Pitt.
It's obviously, but I look at their team. Like, they have slow defense, and they're trying to play an aggressive 3-man in deep forecheck. And every time you do that and you turn a puck over, guess who's not going to catch anyone?
Right.
You.
Yeah, you're not catching anybody.
Many chances. They give, by the nature of the way they play, it's almost like with this group, they should become more passive. Go Trappy, go Lemaire, go Devils, go Wild, and try to just let your talent win you games and not your aggressiveness, because the aggressiveness is just exposing some of their really prominent weaknesses. So I think there is maybe that to consider, which could help them along. But if you're going to ask me if Sidney Crosby is upset at the end of a 5-1 loss where they have 14 shots and their team has 50, yeah, he might.
He definitely will.
And I'm not going to hold that against them. I would be too.
I hear you. Winnipeg has the best record. Are they the best team in the NHL?
Yes. Right. As of right now, yes. I mean, I think you make the case Winnipeg and likely Carolina, and then you go to Florida. Like, those are the three to me that have gotten away. And then, Vancouver's been real good in Vegas, but Winnipeg, look at their goal differential. You look at how many guys, Hayes, their top 9 forwards all have like 11 or more points.
Crazy.
It's wild.
And scoring goals, Johnny. Scoring goals.
Niederreiter, 6 goals, 4 goals, 7 goals. It's just sprinkled all around. Forget about Kyle Connor and Mark Scheifele, who have 10, 12, whatever it is. It's everybody is rolling along so well. They have the best goalie in the league. Or Shesterkin and him are the best 2 goalies in the league. Mm-hmm. Impressively, I guess the defense is holding up really well with that system. Morrissey is an absolute stud, top 10 defenseman, top 8 defenseman in the world right now. Yeah, and I think from the way they play, the system, the understanding of it, the slotting of their forwards, the depth of their group, yeah, they're the best team right now. And I think last night, that game against Colorado would have meant 0 to Colorado, other than wanting to win the points. Like, there's no sort of emotional, let's show we can beat the high-flying Jets. They don't care. Mm. But it would have meant something to the Jets, who got blown out of the water last year in the playoffs by that Colorado team. And they went in there and didn't give up 5 goals. And Hellebuck was the guy he has been over the last couple of years. And I think they would walk out of that game saying, yeah, we get it's November. We get it's not that important. But we like that win. We like that win against that team. And now, I didn't know this. Only 2 teams in history have won 13 of their first 14. I had no idea that was sort of the exclusive company they're in. The Sens back in, 06, 07 or something did this?
Yep.
But I didn't know that sort of the company they were keeping, only 2 teams ever Yeah, they
Me
deserve
neither.
full credit. They've been incredible.
Yeah,
Incredible.
me neither. And that Ottawa team went to the Cup final that year. They lost to Anaheim,
right.
but that's how you get off to a good start. And they've been remarkably healthy. Like they've had no hiccups, no injury issues in Winnipeg, which is significant. But to their credit, like last night was not the way they've been winning in the past. They won 1-0. They took advantage of a odd man rush, and Hellebuck played great. And 13 wins in 14. It's pretty incredible. And it's going to be an awesome night down there tonight. Hall of Fame night on TSN 4. Enjoy it, Johnny. Have a great weekend. We'll do it again soon.
All right, fellas. Have a good weekend.
Mike Johnson joining us here on the Maple Toyota Hotline. Check out Maple Toyota's huge truck and SUV lineup, including Tundra, 4Runner, Highlander, and Grand Highlander in stock and ready to deliver. Visit mapletoyota.com. Yeah, you look at Ottawa. Connor's got 9 goals. Scheifele's got 7. Ehlers got 8. Niederreiter's got 7. Pilardi's got 6. Perfetti's got 4. Appleton's got 4. Like, they're scoring goals.
Power play's on fire.
Yeah. It's incredible.
I mean, the only thing I hear Johnny say they're the best team in the league. Yes, for these 14 games, clearly they're the best team in the league. Only the Leafs have beat them. But I just have a hard time getting too far behind it when they've won one playoff series in the past 6 seasons.
Right. They are beholden to a similar history as the one down the street.
Yeah.
And
now they got to a conference final in Hellebuck's rookie year, and
16 or 17, I think it was.
18, I think it was, and so that's something the Leafs haven't done, and so there is that. They've got guys that have done it. Gone deep into the playoffs, but yeah, I just find it hard to get too excited about a team that's reeling off all these wins, as good as it looks and as electric as they've been, because they just don't have that resume. Florida, you look at and you go, they've won a cup and they're awesome.
Yes,
and you're like, that's probably the best team in the league.
Yeah, well, I think if you're handicapping a best of 7 series starting tonight, Florida and Winnipeg, the Panthers would clearly be favored.
Because they've done it.
Yeah, and because regardless of what's happened through 14 games, they're still a better team. Winnipeg has earned everything they've got, and Winnipeg has been a good team for a long time. They go to the playoffs every year.
That's the thing.
Like, it's not as if this is some team out of like you look at Minnesota, the start they've had. That's surprising because they just have not really been a playoff team for a while. They've had cap issues with buying out Parise and Suter, and they always kind of hover in and out of the playoff picture, but they're never a legit contender.
No.
Really, throughout their existence back in Minnesota, they have not been a contending team, and they're off to a really good start. That one makes you wonder, can they keep this up? Winnipeg isn't going to keep up at this pace, but they were going to likely be a playoff team.
Yeah.
Right. And likely compete. And if they won a round or two, regardless if they had 95 points or 125, you wouldn't be shocked by that. Question is, can you go the next step?
Right.
And 2 and 3 more steps and actually carry it all the way to a cup final and win one? We're not going to have that answer until we get to the spring, where if Florida continues on this pace, they're going to be a massive favorite to do it again.
They will.
Because they've shown they can get to a cup final 2 years in a row.
And,
which would be pretty incredible if they went to a third straight just like Tampa did. That would be crazy.
Because that's the one thing that makes me think it's going to be tough, right?
Yes.
Just that the accumulated wear and tear of going that deep year after year. We've heard it from so many different players that have done it. Right? It just takes so much out of you.
6 straight years with a Florida team in the Cup final.
Not good.
Would really be sickening.
Just incredible.
But it's already happened for 5 years in a row, so
I know.
Anything's possible here. All right, Argos Alouettes tomorrow in Montreal. Ryan Dinwiddie, the head coach of the Argos, coming up. Overdrive continues. TSN 1050 and on TSN 4. Mail It In Fridays, brought to you by Boston Pizza, Canada's favorite sports bar. From tip-offs to tie bites and puck drops to pizza, BP's elite lineup of apps, wings, and ice-cold beers, always dialed in for game time. How soon your local BP tonight? What a weekend for Boston Pizza fans. Because tonight, I'll bet you the one down on front. I always reference that. If you're going to a Leaf game tonight, it's probably packed right now. Probably people down there watching. It's likely on mute. Pretty much 100% it'll be on mute. That doesn't mean we're not represented, right?
Yeah.
We'll be up on the TV screens down there at Boston Pizza. And you get the Leaf game tonight. You've got the Raptors in action tomorrow and Sunday. You got the Argos in action tomorrow. You got the Rough Riders in Winnipeg playing the Bombers. And Ryan Dinwiddie will join us here in a moment, the head coach of the Argos. Curious what the plan is the night before on the road. Because football is so different than other sports. This is based on what Luke has told us.
Right.
Like Luke Wilson has told us stories about when they're on the road, strict curfew.
Oh, yeah.
like to the point where they may break in your room to make sure you're in there. That is a legit story he has told us, that there are security breaking into rooms at 10 o'clock or whatever to make sure you're in there.
Oh, yeah. It's a different
Seems
mentality.
a little bit aggressive.
Doesn't happen in basketball and hockey.
No.
Doesn't.
Remember that story when the Raptors were playing Cleveland years ago?
That's right.
And Simmons saw, can't remember who it was, walking through the casino at 2 a.m?
Yeah.
And he wrote about it, and that became a big story. I don't think the Argos will be at the Montreal casino at 2 a.m. tonight.
But if they wanted to be, I mean, they don't play till 3 in the afternoon.
They'd be fine.
They're adults.
They are adults.
I mean, some guys
But they're
go to
professional
bed
athletes. It's a big game, man. It's the East Final tomorrow.
Late. Yeah.
It's a big game. All right, let's head there now. Here he is, the head coach of the Argos, prepping for the game tomorrow. Back on Overdrive, here's Ryan Dinwiddie. How you doing, Ryan?
I'm doing great, guys. How you doing? Thanks for having me on again.
We appreciate you doing this. Do you guys? What's the curfew like in Montreal tonight? How do you approach that?
Well, I don't have a curfew. We say 11 o'clock, right?
Okay.
I don't. We might have a coach in the lobby, see who's straggling, right? But I don't think it's a problem. I heard what you're saying earlier as far as the 3 o'clock start. So, I mean, those guys got to get some rest. Like, we treated it like a home game. We literally got here like an hour and a half ago, right? So I just got done with media. I've just kicked off my shoes, sat up in my room, got to go through the call sheet, same with our players, go get a dinner, get some good night's rest. Let's go play some good football tomorrow.
I like it. What's the difference between prepping for a home game and a road game? You mentioned, try to treat it like a home game, but it's not. Like, how do you go? What feels different, looks different, the preparation, how do you go about it on the road compared to being at home?
Yeah, so when we play out east, we do everything at BMO, right? And then when we go out west, we do it on the road. And I don't really love working on the hotels. You get bad Wi-Fi service and stuff like that. So you don't bring the server with you unless it's a Grey Cup. So we did everything at home. Now we're here. We got everything, dialed up on our computer. So it's a little bit more comfortable when we go out east, do everything at home, and treat it like a home game. Now you get here, get off your feet, rest, do all those things. So obviously we got to understand we're not playing at home. We're on the road, right? So crowd noise is going to be in effect. Sellout crowd tomorrow. We got to get our silent cadence going. We practice all week. So we're ready to go. I mean, we didn't give ourselves a position to play at home this week, and now we got to go earn it on the road.
So what's the sports psychology angle here, Coach? When the role reversal is pretty stark here, where last year you guys were the big favorites, 16-win team that people were calling one of the best teams in CFL history, and these guys knock you off at this big moment in the season on your home field. This year, they're the defending champions. They've been first place all year. You've been chasing them, beat them 2 out of 3 times, but it's a different type of a situation. How do you approach that as a coach?
Well, I think, last year we weren't the underdog, right? We went into it resting guys. You had everything locked up, and, maybe they're rusty, maybe they weren't. Maybe we just didn't have a good performance. You don't know, right? This week we're the underdogs, right? We're coming on the road. We kind of knew this was going to happen, a while ago. We look forward to it, right? But we don't change our approach up too much. We got to see, what they're doing defensively, what are they doing offensively, okay? How they line up on special teams is going to change our return units or our cover units. But give it a chance to play playoff football at the end of the year. That's all you can ask for, right? We would prefer a home game for our ownership and our fans, but we're going on the road, and we got to find a way to get it done. Now, we're going to deal with crowd noise and all those different elements. But it's going to be fun. It's going to be an exciting game, and that's why you sign up to play football or coach football, to play in these games and coach in these games, right? So I think everybody in the building's excited, as I assume they would be on their end.
Absolutely. With Ryan Dinwiddie, head coach of the Argos Alouettes tomorrow in Montreal, the East Final. We spoke with you this time last week, and obviously going into that game against the Red Blacks, and we were drawing off your experience last year and what you thought you'd see out of your team, and specifically the offense, specifically the quarterback. You guys hung 58 on the scoreboard last week and 55 in the final 3 quarters. Obviously, it worked at an extreme level, but can you break it down from your perspective? What was the catalyst to that? Why did your offense pop the way it popped last week?
Well, I thought we had a good plan going into it, and you guys know how I like to be balanced as far as run game, but I didn't feel like the run game was going to win us that football game. So we were going to push the ball down the field as we did in the second quarter. The first 2 and out, I call a run play on 2nd and 4, and, we don't push up to the wheel and we punt. I'm like, screw it, we're throwing the ball.
Mm-hmm.
And I told the guys before the game, we're playing to win. We're playing to win, not playing to lose. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So we're going to be aggressive, and we have to be aggressive. We got to be aggressive in this game. I know they're going to be aggressive, especially on defense. It's going to be a hard-fought game, and the most physical team with the takes care of the football, I think is going to win this football game. And obviously, I feel like that's going to be us, what we're going to do in those next 60 minutes of this next Eastern Final. But I'm looking forward to it. I feel like our locker room's been great. I feel like our culture's been good. Last year we stubbed our toe, but you look over the last 2 years, we've had a great locker room, great culture. Guys come to work with purpose, and I'm looking forward to seeing them show that tomorrow.
What's your pregame speech game like, Coach? Are you big on the motivational moment before you head out there? What are you planning for tomorrow?
Well, occasionally I'll write some notes down, but I typically wing it, right? Kind of just go off the feel of it. I don't write a lot down. I'm not too much into it. Just let's hit the key details that we need to think about going into this game. You got to motivate the guys in a certain way, but you don't have to rah them. They're men. They're professionals, right? Lead them in the right direction. But we got to understand, what could cost us the opportunity to win this game, more importantly, right? And then what's it going to take us to win this game? And I'm not a, fiery guy. I'm not going to run around the locker room, put on a show. These are the details. This is what we need to do to win. Let's understand we only got 10 days that are guaranteed together if we win this game. But let's not lose the opportunity to understand that this is our last opportunity together as a group, as a unit. And those guys have been together through it for 18 games and now 19, and we're going on to 20, right? We want to get on 21. So that's very important for the locker room to understand that. Let's keep building together. Let's build something special. I talk about legacy a lot. We want to be one of the better teams in Toronto Argonauts history. Let's cement our legacy a little bit.
Yeah, for sure. How much does the revenge angle come into it when you think about what they did to you last year to spoil your incredible season?
Well, I know it's been the media thing. I've had about 20 questions on it all week. I mean, we already know that's there, right? I mean, revenge, if you're going to chase revenge, that can get you in trouble, right? Let's just go win this football game. And then we can talk about revenge afterwards, right? We don't want them to beat us twice and send us home where we got to watch them play in the Grey Cup. That's going to hurt us, right? And as a professional, it should. But I don't want to get too much in the revenge game. Let's look at the assignment game. They go and nickel up with their 3 down, 3 linebackers compared to their 4 down, 2 linebackers. What are they doing? Stuff like that. I think that's going to get us in the right mind frame to understand the assignments. We already know what's at stake. We're going to get there. But I think everybody in the locker room wants a little bit of revenge, right? And that's given, right? If you're a competitor, that's going to be there for you.
Absolutely. And, there's so much focus. Last year going into that game, it was, okay, how does this historically great offense, maybe attack the Alouettes defense last year? And it was the Alouettes defense that was swarming you with, blitzes and causing turnovers. And their defense is very stout this year, and obviously there's a lot of focus on that. We've been talking about it for the last couple of weeks. But what about the other side of the ball, like your defense and how you approach Cody Fajardo, and the fact that they've had a good year, a very successful year. They're in the 1 seed for a reason. What do you expect to see out of the Alouettes' offensive schemes tomorrow, and what do you need out of your defense to make sure that you shut them down?
Yeah, no doubt. So Cody's very efficient. If the first read's not there, finding his checkdowns, right, keep him in that manageable situation as far as the second and medium, move the chains, or his first down, get a second and manageable, right? He's great at that. And Fletcher's awesome out of the backfield. He can stick it in between the tackles. So I think we're going to see a little bit of what we seen last week. So we got to be ready for that. Jason's a great coach, does a good job on offense. He's evolved. Their offense is totally different from what he did in Edmonton. So we've been working on that all offseason and now. I think we just got to stay true to our rules. Okay, we got to make them throw it from the dot, which, if we can't get him out of the pocket, make him throw it from the pocket. He's got to beat us with his arm talent, right? Now we get him outside the pocket. Now he can create and find those other throws down the field, or he can run for a first down. We got to keep him in the pocket. We got to stop the run.
It's going to be a blast tomorrow. 3 p.m. kickoff. It'll be seen on TSN, heard right here on TSN Radio. We can't wait for it. Good luck tomorrow, Coach. We appreciate you doing this.
All right, thanks, guys. Appreciate you guys.
You
Have
got
a
it.
good one.
You got it. Ryan Dinwiddie, the head coach of the Argos. And it's effectively a pick 'em. You know, the Alouettes are a slight favorite, and they should be favored. They're at home. They've been the 1 seed. But like you said, the Argos have played them pretty well this year, beat them a couple times. And the roles really are reversed. Not as extreme because the Argos were, like, so much better than everyone else last year. But it's
these
pretty
guys
close.
are the defending champs.
Yeah, exactly. Yep.
So
the Alouettes won the Grey Cup last year.
They've proven themselves. Last year's Argos team hadn't.
Yep.
So you got to give Montreal a lot of credit here.
Absolutely.
They're no joke, and they're actually, I was reading some of their media. They're trying to spin it like they're not getting respect, like they're not being seen as a big enough favorite.
Right.
Even though they have won the championship and they did run in first place most of the year. So it's interesting how the coach.
I think that's
play the psychological
understandable.
game.
I think that's warranted. And listen, it syncs up with Leafs Habs tomorrow night.
That's right.
Like if you're a Toronto, Montreal sports fan, this is a big, big weekend. One game in Montreal, one game in Toronto. I don't think you could script it any better than that.
Great.
Yeah, it's a complete coincidence, but we'll see what I think. Toronto, I think they're going 2-0 tomorrow.
You're gonna get them?
I think the Argos are going to get them tomorrow. And then I think the Leafs will get the Habs. I mean, if you're not scoring 5-6 goals against this Habs team right now,
You better.
you better.
Everybody does.
Everybody's putting massive offensive production up against them. Their defensive play is so porous.
I don't know what Marty St. Louis is doing out there, but we had Marty Biron on, and we were talking about that structure issue that they've got.
Yeah. It's staggering how bad they are defensively.
Teams are just going through them. They're not there.
Mm-hmm.
Like you just don't see that in the NHL very
No.
often.
And that's a 5-man unit issue. That's not just the players playing defense.
No, it's not one guy getting beat.
No.
It's just teams just going through
shredding them.
Just shredding them as though they're not there. And Marty's talking about the technical stuff of it's a hybrid man-to-man, and it doesn't work unless you're really on point, because if one guy breaks down, the whole thing breaks down. I mean, I don't know what Marty St. Louis thinks he's doing out there, but that can't last. You can't allow that to happen.
That's the question. Like, now that you're this deep into the year and it's so ugly, when do you make an adjustment and realize we can't continue to do this? It's not working.
Yeah.
We got to go with a different type of defensive scheme.
Well, that's the thing. Like, if you're a developmental project and you've got this, you're doing a rebuild, is that really how you want your young players to come up learning?
Mm-hmm.
Like, you're learning to give up 4 goals a game?
Right.
To lead the league in goals against?
Yeah.
Is that what you want?
And if it wasn't for Montembeault on a couple of occasions, they probably have like 2 wins on the year. And like opening night, Leaf fans saw it. Like, he stood on his head. Yeah. The only reason Montreal won that game was because of Montembeault.
No doubt.
And it's a struggle for the goalies, too, man.
But I wonder about it, too, when you've got a coach with no track record at the pro level, right? And Marty St. Louis has no track record at the pro level. As good a player as he was. We all know how good.
Hall of Famer.
Hall of Famer. And I kind of liken it to Darko Rajakovic, where Raptors developmental team, they've got the worst defense in the NBA. And you're like, okay, you're a developmental team, but shouldn't defense be something you can teach? Shouldn't defense be something that can be cobbled together no matter what your talent level is, no matter what your experience level is? I think yes.
Yeah.
I think you can play better defense.
But what are you developing? That's the question. Right. Are you developing, the way your offensive schemes and puck movement or ball movement and, exactly, and allowing that to just basically fall by the wayside?
But is that the kind of player you want to develop?
That's the
where
question.
It's like, defense, what's that?
Yeah.
Then you got the second coming of DeMar DeRozan, where you're sitting one of your best players in the fourth quarter because he doesn't play defense.
You can't play him. Yeah.
That's not what you want.
No, it's not what you want. It's not.
So I wonder about that, man.
It's an ugly start for Montreal, and it's been years, man. And they're starting to get impatient in Montreal, and they deserve to. Well, at some point you got to turn it around to an extent, and it's not going to happen this year. I don't see how it's going to happen next year. Like, I don't see how anything's going to magically happen unless you get a new coach that implements a new system. Even then, I'm not sure they're prepared to actually do anything with it next year. But we'll see. Luke Wilson coming up. Overdrive continues. TSN 1050 and on the TSN app. All right, CJ Miles coming up into the next hour. Got a big one tonight. The Cavs are undefeated. They're playing Golden State tonight. And the Raptors are in L.A. this weekend. Clippers tomorrow, Lakers on Sunday. So
the Intuit Dome.
The Intuit Dome, which looks amazing.
Incredible.
And I'm sure it is amazing. And Kawhi won't be playing. I'm assuming he'll be in attendance. Do they force him to show up and hang around the team?
Does he take the chopper in from San Diego, from his palatial estate in San Diego? I don't know.
What is Kawhi doing when he is not training or playing or anything?
Great question.
What are his team obligations?
Great question, man. You know what? Everybody talks about the summer of Kawhi and what it could have been and the dynasty they could have had. They would have been the championship favorites. Or maybe they wouldn't have because he just wouldn't have been healthy.
Yeah. That is an alternate reality that absolutely could have played out too. They could have gone down that road, although I don't really think it was ever actually there for them. But maybe they acquire Paul George and he does stay, and they're both just hurt all the time and they do nothing.
Yeah, very possible.
Like that definitely could have happened. That's what literally happened with the Clippers.
What happened to Steve Ballmer? He gave him the world and paid a lot of money and a lot of picks.
Oh, that Paul George deal is such a horrendous trade. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander on his own for Paul George is a horrendous trade.
Think about that.
On his own.
What a shakedown by Oklahoma City.
Well, and I read today they have the Sixers' first-round pick.
Yeah.
Oklahoma City.
They've got nothing but picks. I mean, they're the pick factory.
And yet they finished, second in the West last year?
Yeah, they may win it this year.
They might win it this year. Incredible. Final hour coming up for the week. Overdrive continues. TSN 1050 and on the TSN app.